Association is a professional non-profit body affiliated to All India Management Association with the aim to promote scientific management in industry and trade. It also undertakes training and consultancy to improve managerial effectiveness and competitiveness of its members. Merit Management Association, formed in 1966, is registered under the Societies Registration Act 1860. The founder members of the association were Sri K.N. Mohan, Managing Director, Mohan Meekins Breweries, Sri Sultan Singh Jain, Managing Director, Saru Smelting, and Sri R. Sahai, General Manager, Dorala Sugar Works.
Good evening, everyone. We have our speaker for the day, Rohit Seth, with us. You already have seen his profile. He's a very experienced person, been doing in same business for last 17 years. The purpose of this Beyond COVID series is there are certain things going in around our life. Life has come to a pause right now just because of this entire lockdown situation. So we are assuming that everything's going to be fine. So that's the reason why we have started this series Beyond COVID. We don't want to think what's happening in the COVID, what will happen once we are done with the COVID. I've just taken this inspiration on my very favorite childhood TV serial. There was a TV serial you might recall on a Discovery Channel long back in late 90s that was called Beyond 2000. In that series, they used to talk a lot about the gizmos that are going to come up in the year 2000 and afterwards. So this is the same series. We want to think something positive, what we can do after this COVID pandemic is over. So this is all about this Beyond series. So not wasting much of the time, I would hand over this platform to Rohit. And Rohit will guide us about this concept of mergers and acquisition with respect to MSMEs and in the Indian scenario, how MSME can be affected and be beneficial about the concept of this merger and acquisitions. And we are also assuming that the entire world, the supply chains and the manufacturing process would either or might shift from China to India or to Vietnam or to Bangladesh or to Malaysia. Somehow people are thinking of 1+1 gold, and 1+1 is either it's going to be China or it's going to be 1 plus another country. So we should have a lot of opportunities coming up down the line. So with this, I would like to introduce Rohit, our speaker for the day. Rohit, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Gauravji.
Something about Rohit. Rohit has something around 17 years of experience in this field, and he's approximately done and worked with almost 4 big companies, and he has done almost 400 plus transactions in the same profession. Apart from this, he's undergraduate from Ohio Wesley University, USA, in a certified public accountant from the state of Ohio and Illinois, USA. So with this, I would like to hand over back to Rohit. And after this session, we'll be having question answer session. And question answer session, either you can raise the hand or you can put a question on a chat window directly to Rohit or directly to me, right? So we'll answer all the questions in the chat only, right? Thank you. With this, I'll hand over the platform to Rohit. Rohit, welcome you.
Thank you, Gauravji,
on this event, and really appreciate your effort for joining us in this event.
Thank you, Gauravji. Really appreciate that. Thank you for that introduction as well. I'm just going to share a few simple slides that I prepared. So when Gauravji and me first decided to try and do this session, the world was very different. We were in a before COVID situation in some sense. When we were talking in Jan Feb, we did not think business or economy would take such a drastic turn in such time. that we had. So what I'm going to spend, the next 30, 40 minutes doing is I understand, from Gauravji in terms of what we had earlier planned to do, was spend a little bit of time talking about mergers and acquisitions in general, in terms of what is it, from a typical business perspective, given that the audience here might not have a complete exposure in terms of what does an M&A process hold. And before we get into the COVID situation in terms of, how M&A might change in a sort of COVID environment, how fundraising or how JVs or how businesses and business partners that one looks at might change in the coming months in terms of how that is evaluated compared to where it was. I thought it might be good to spend a few minutes just talking about the M&A structure. What are a typical type of transactions that we see? What is a typical M&A transaction life cycle from beginning to end? What the process is generally? What is it? Who are the parties involved? Just for everybody's knowledge, I think I'm going to start with that. And as Gaurav said, please do keep asking questions, raising your hand, and we'll try and address that as we go. So, what are the typical type of transactions that we see in the market? Right? Acquisitions, sales, disposals, mergers, IBRs. So, what you see in this sheet is, or this slide, is basically various types of transactions that take place in business, right? So when we talk about mergers and acquisition, it's not just about merging a company or acquiring a company. There are various types of transactions that take place, right? And especially when we start comparing this to, in sense, post-COVID environment. If somebody has a very strong balance sheet, they might be in the market for acquisitions, right? Because this is a good time to look at them. Others who might be feeling, the working capital and the cash liquidity constraints might look at sales or disposal. Some might be looking at mergers of equals in some sense. We probably see restructuring in terms of IBRs and defaults going on. So that might be. On the right side is where we talk about joint ventures and alliances. That's part of mergers and acquisitions. IPO, again, all of us are aware of what is it. So this is basically when we talk about M&A. These are the various types, not all inclusive, but various types of transactions that generally get classified as M&A. When we look at, there are the investors. What are the type of investors in this environment? Right? If one of us has to do fundraising right now, or if one of us has to look at a JV alliance, especially when we look at a lot more manufacturing possibilities coming to India. So when we look at such a situation, it's important to understand what is the end perspective that one might look at when investing in a company, right? And in case any of you are looking at tying up with someone, what is it that your partner, if it's a larger company, might be looking at? From a financial and a private equity type investor, what they generally look at is what is going to be their immediate return, right? They want to know, am I able, because they get money from outside and they invest, they obviously have to show return to their stakeholders. So they generally, when private equity and the VCs, what we call venture capitalists, are looking at investment, they generally look at, say, a 5 to 7 year horizon at best. What is the return that I'm going to get in the 5 to 7 year horizon? Their focus when looking at businesses is generally quality of earnings, or what we call EBITDA. So this is above net income, looking at without depreciation, amortization, and also interest cost. So what is the actual cash being generated by the business? What is the forecast probability and cash flow? We'll cover this slightly in terms of how this changes in terms of COVID, and how when we talk to investors now, when we talk to sort of people who are looking at companies now, how that is changing. There's a lot more focus, and we expect that going forward also there's going to be a lot more focus on the forecast of numbers and the prospective cash flow. The quality of assets and liabilities, again, an important factor from a perspective that we see is there's going to be a lot of debtor issues right now, right? I mean, and also creditor issues. There's probably going to be a lot more inventory write-off. So what is the actual level of working capital that I'm looking at from in my company or in other companies that I'm looking to invest? I think that's going to be equally critical at least then. And then of course is the tax impact. What is, are there any tax holidays available? Are there any tax benefits available? On the other side are what we call strategic investors. Strategic investors are more like corporate investors, like all of you, or companies looking at, and these are more corporate companies type look. They're, other than sort of looking at the profitability and the working capital, the focus is also on how does this alliance, or how does this merger or acquisition, how will this benefit the company operationally? How does the product sort of supplement and complement what I already have in a product mix? Does it give me a geographic benefit, in terms of does it increase my on-ground presence? Or even if I use the manufacturing facility, does that help us? Okay. And for a corporate investor or a buyer, the focus is more on the net income side, because sometimes they're listed, sometimes they're not. Even the smaller companies, it's more about earnings per share rather than an EBITDA number that's there. So that is where we look at what are the types of investors and buyers that we look at. The third is what we call a deal life cycle. Now this, from a sort of mergers and acquisition perspective, but this will give you a fair idea of an entire process flow. So even when we look at during these times, if any of you are considering alliances, when we look at even outside companies looking at investing in India, or when we see the shift potentially from China to other countries, what is generally one would want to look at in terms of, and how does that process generally go? So I thought I'll spend a few minutes sort of covering the process flow here, right? The first and the foremost thing that gets done is called a teaser, or it's a very small sort of information about the company, right? It doesn't give too many details about the company, because at the onset we don't want to share too many details because before we sign into an NDA, because there is also an issue here in terms of people just want to know certain business practices. And that's when you have to differentiate between who is actually truly an investor who wants to sort of look at the business versus somebody who is just trying to understand what are the best business practices. So a teaser basically gives a sample of, okay, what is my business about? The second is an expression of interest, where the person comes and says, okay, I am interested in going ahead with this. Let's get into a sort of formal process in terms of, let's sign an NDA where we start sharing information. An NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. This is basically a legal document that prepares legally companies from using or sharing the information outside what is prescribed in the non-disclosure. Sometimes there's also something called an information memorandum here. So once the sort of parties agree that I want to have discussions around a potential M&A, there is a formal sort of document that is created that lists out what is the details of the business, right? More less sort of a feasibility study if I want to compare, but more generic information about the business, about the industry, about maybe the surrounding area, the potential market, the potential products, and sort of high-level financial numbers as well as forecasts that get into. Then there is generally a first-round discussion where one understands, okay, what are the requirements, what is it that one looks at, what is it one wants to start valuing, put some numbers around the business, and that's where a bid comes in. A bid is basically showing or giving a value number, because there could be multiple players in this world, right? So, for example, if a company wants to raise funds, right? If any of you are looking at raising funds, you could have potentially 3 or 4 people who might be interested in tying up with you, right? Or it could be vice versa also. If it's again taking an example, if somebody wants to set up a manufacturing facility, there could be 3 or 4 people interested in tying up, right? So this is more a shortlisting thing that gets done in terms of who brings what to the table at this point. That's when happens shortlist bidders. Then there's the management presentation, where basically the two companies meet. So this is when they discuss more between the promoters. They have a conversation in terms of what the business is about and what do we do. Based on that, then there is After management presentation was where we have the due diligence that takes place. Now due diligence takes various shapes and forms, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But in the next slide. But what we're trying to then, what basically is, there's a lot more deep dive into the business in terms of the commercials, in terms of where is it that you start sort of looking at each of the line items in the financial statements. You start looking at the entire business environment, and you start looking at what is it that I need. What are the inherent risks in the business, right? From a liability perspective, from employee perspective, are there any unions in place? Are there any legal lawsuits in place? Is there any, sometimes हम कंपनी जो बनाते हैं कि उसमें कुछ hidden तो नहीं है जो हमें अभी नहीं पता at the time of investment, and that's what we try to do in the due diligence. And then based on the due diligence findings, there's a final valuation that's done, and that is when the negotiations happening, where the negotiations happen in terms of what is the जब बोलते हैं कि टेबल पे बैठ के बात करते हैं कि फाइनल प्राइस नेगोशिएशन क्या हो. जब when that is get agreed, then we sign a formal contract. This takes place in the form of a share purchase agreement or a sale purchase agreement, which sort of lists down all the agreed things in a M&A transaction. So what is going to be my price? When am I going to hand over the thing? What is there any cash I'm going to give at handover? Is there any working capital I'm going to give during handover? If you're looking at a JV, then what is it that both JV partners bring to this? What is it that we are looking at between the two parties? What is going to be the roles that are going to be defined? So this is everything legal is put into a document, any warranties, any indemnities that get put in. So that is what we look at when we're looking at signing, and then after that is when the completion happens, right? When the handover or when the handshakes and everything are handed over and like that. So this is an entire sort of life cycle in terms of when we look at that. I'm going to take a 1-minute pause to see if there's any questions at this time. That Manoj, any raised hands at this point, or should I continue? I shall keep continuing. What I sort of tried to list down in this picture is basically who are, when we talk about transactions, there are various, and especially if foreign parties get involved, especially when we're looking at trying to sort of tie up or do a JV or do some sort of understanding with especially certain larger corporates or certain larger companies, then all these names start being thrown around. So I wanted to sort of share this with all of you in terms of who are generally party to a transaction. So when we generally look at this, we see who are the parties: the seller or the target. This is basically a company which is getting sold, a company who's raising funds, or one of the JV partners. Right? An investment bank or advisor plays a central role. And this could be, your CA, your lawyer, anybody who's sort of playing a sort of central role in terms of managing this process or helping you through this process. The bidders are basically either the JV partners or people who are interested in funds, who are backed with banks based on the financing that is required. Then the other players that you would generally hear is one auditor. The auditor is the person, of course, who is the CA signing the accounts. The lawyers are required for the share purchase agreement, for any if especially if money is coming from outside India, what is the best tax efficient way to structure this? And then doing a legal diligence in terms of looking at customer contracts, looking at supplier contracts, looking at any leases that are required. So lawyers take care of all of that. Generally, then there are CA firms who do something called financial diligence, which I've been doing for the last 20 years, and tax diligence. So this is basically, when the CAs look at all the historical financial statements and understand what is my sustainable business. And then there are either CA firms or other firms who do what we call commercial diligence. Commercial diligence is basically doing a market analysis in terms of if you are manufacturing a product, what is the potential of that product in the larger market. So that is what people look at from a commercial diligence. Operational diligence is looking at your processes and your manufacturing or your distribution network, right? And what is the sort of impact of that. Labor and IT, this might be not as labor diligence is again if you have a large employee base, what is it what is it अगर वो employee base में that you look at and उसमें are there any sort of ESI liabilities, any contractual liabilities, any pension liabilities, not pension but PF liabilities generally that we pay to contractors with the leading contractor is responsible for. There are laws, of course, in India that puts it on the ultimate target. So there's a lot of spent time looking at these things as well. If you have a manufacturing facility, depending on who the partner is, they might want to study the environmental impact of it. So we've seen that even in the MSME sector, a lot of larger companies looking at what is the environmental impact of this. So I think these are all the sort of parties involved. So should you ever do an M&A, just to keep understanding, okay, it's just not going back and forth. There's a lot of conflict, a lot of people that get involved in